Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Tooele Happy Hour podcast, starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss, where if head trauma had a podcast, it would sound like this. Humana, right? Okay. All right, so today's guest, she's not a Tooele County representative, nor is she running in Tooele County, but she has ambitions, and her ambitions are to our neighbor, Cache County GOP Chair. She's running for the chair. She's going to test the mettle of the chair, as some would say. And then we're going to talk about some modern economic theories in money policies and things like that. So I'd like to introduce our guest, Kim Hamblin. Kim, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Kim Hamblin. I'm running for GOP chair here in Cache County. So we are the North. That's the slogan up here. So I am running because, very much like so many Americans, I'm just sick of the madness and the craziness, and it's not something that we can ignore any further. In fact, it's not just at our doorstep, it's kicked in the front door and pushed its way into our homes and into our lives and into our kids' lives. And I feel like there needs to be some changes going on. And as much as I post about it on Facebook, it's not going to do anything unless I actually get involved. And so that's why I'm running for chair up here.
Okay. All right. How involved with the political system have you been up till now?
In all honesty, I haven't been. I am not, part of the establishment. I'm just an everyday citizen that is just sick and tired of all of this. And so again, as much as I talk about it on Facebook and with my family and friends and random strangers and clients, it's not going to make enough difference unless you get involved. And I can't tell people to get involved if I don't do it myself. And so, and that's the beautiful thing about our political process, is that it allows for everyday citizens to get involved. And that's what we need. We need to kind of revitalize and re-energize the Republican Party. And
So what you're saying is you got sick and tired of the keyboard warrior activities, and you're like, I'm stepping up to the plate.
That's right. So I gotta walk the talk. So
good.
I can't sit there and tell people, oh, we need to be more involved, and the voters, we're just not doing enough, and then not doing anything myself. That's kind of hypocritical. So
what disparities have you seen in your county Republican Party?
Well, one of the things that I have seen a lot more as of late is just the lack of communication about events and about information. I mean, I can't tell you how many delegates I've talked with that they had no idea that we had even a county convention going on, and they weren't aware of it. They weren't notified of it until just more recently. Somebody told me that in the last couple of weeks, and only in the last couple of weeks, has the county GOP page actually started showing more information and actually sharing information, making it easier to find. Otherwise, you're like 7-8 clicks in trying to find any information. And so that is a big problem. You can't ask the community to be involved and then withhold the information as to when these events are, and how this works. You ask a person how or what a delegate is or what a caucus is, and most of them can't tell you, but the resources are out there, and they're not anywhere to be found on the page or on their Facebook or any of it. And the other problem that we've seen is that there have been complaints that there's been some censorship and moderation happening on the GOP, Cache County GOP Facebook page. And I'm just like, we can't sit here and say that we're pro-Constitution and be all pro First Amendment and Second Amendment and then completely censor people on the First Amendment.
What
Being able
I've
to
been censoring
their mind.
people a lot lately on our page, and sometimes I think it's necessary. Like we've been getting these ads saying Julia or Justin Bieber has passed away, or
Yeah.
things like that, and it's
Yeah,
completely
so
false.
yes, false, like just blatantly false information. But when you are talking about people's opinions on topics that the residents want to bring up on the Cache County GOP page, and that gets deleted, or it's not allowed to be shown, you're not allowed to comment, then those are some problems. And so, definitely you want to control misinformation. You don't want to spread lies, but being able to have your opinion on a topic, and then being told you can't have an opinion, not talking about facts or anything like that, but just an opinion. That's pretty harsh. And so, I wasn't impressed with that either. But the main thing is there is just such a lack of transparency about events, and nobody knows about it until almost it's either at the day of or it's already passed. I've had a couple of delegates just recently tell me that they did not find out about the convention events or meet and greet events until they've already passed. And so that's a problem. I feel, again, you can't ask the party to be involved if you're not going to allow them to be involved in the first place.
Do you think that's that they're not sharing that information on purpose, or do you think it's just a lack of knowledge of the wherewithal to update their pages and stay in communication?
I'm not sure if it's intentional or if it's just a lack of organization, but either way, it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't.
I've gone down to Davis County, and I mean, they're the third largest county in the state. And so they have way bigger population and more people that they have to reach. And I mean, they've had probably for at least 2 months events to, get the word out, to let the delegates have a chance to meet with the candidates. And, here we tell people all the time, you need to be informed about the candidates you're voting on, but then we're not giving them the chance to meet them before they vote on them. And so that's a big problem when we're telling everybody you need to be more informed, but then we're again giving them the chance to be more informed. And so I don't know where the disconnect is, but it needs to be fixed. That's the problem. And I don't feel like, at least personally, I don't know that that has been top priority for them, unless there's a lot of noise about it. But the delegates shouldn't have to constantly be asking, is there an event? When is the event? They should be able to just go on the page and it should be there for them to easily find, and not have to, go again 7-8 clicks in. It should be just right on, the first page or the home page, if at the very least. But you can go into menu and do a calendar / events and list all the events out. I don't know how difficult that really is to do.
Yeah, and also you'd want the leadership to actually reach out to the delegates, because it's the delegates' job to reach out to the populace that they're a delegate for, their
Exactly.
district, and go find out that information. So,
but
yeah,
they can't do that if they don't have enough time to do it. That's the other problem, is the lack of time. And let's be honest, that is the most precious commodity.
Yeah.
It's not money, it's time, because money comes and goes. Time, it just goes.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
It's funny that we talk about reaching out to the delegates, because I'll be honest, I'm a state delegate for this area, and I don't think, well, I mean, aside for the individuals who've come on the show, I don't recall anyone reaching out to me lately. So I don't think it's just Cache County.
And so then again, that's something that I would like to, bring to the attention of all the counties. So we were talking just a minute before we started this, one goal I would like to see happen as chair is for my county to reach out to other counties that have similar values as ours, and do better coordination and better cooperation to get policies pushed through that we want to see happen. and fight against policies we don't want to see happen. And there is strength in numbers. There's a reason why that, saying exists, because it's true. And so if we could get more, cooperation between the counties, we would be unstoppable. And so I feel like a lot of counties feel the way we do, which is Salt Lake, pretty much dominates the whole state, but they're not the whole state. They just happen to be the most populated part of the state. But if you get all the other surrounding areas together, I mean, our numbers are much bigger than Salt Lake's. And so there's definitely some work that can be done to improve how strong our voices are. But I feel like there's just a lot of infighting and lack of cooperation, and we need to just get over ourselves.
I've heard a lot of rumblings about Freedom Caucus on a state level kind of circulating. Maybe like state representatives are going to try to get together and form like a freedom orientated caucus of some sort, and then use that as a singular vote. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard bits and pieces. I'm not sure how to really better organize that, or how to really make that work for everybody. But I know some people have talked about it here and there. I haven't gone big into it, because my main focus right now is just to get our caucus up and running correctly. I feel like there's been, again, talk from delegates that they've gone. When it's a presidential election year, of course, it's massive. The caucuses are huge, but it's midterms. Somebody said there was like 8 people. It's like, oh my gosh. So that's pretty bad. I mean, attendance all around, I think, is not as high as it could be. The engagement needs to be a lot higher. And part of it is because, voter apathy. And the other part is because there is a lack of energy within the Republican Party. I've said this many a times that, our party, it seems like it's just boring. I went to a Lincoln Day dinner, and I told Chase this on his podcast with the Conservatine. I went to the Lincoln Day dinner. He was actually a speaker there, but I told him, I'm like, it was just minus the keynote speaker, overall, it was really dull. It was really, really boring. And he said, I agree. And why aren't we more excited? Why isn't there more buzz at that event where you are in a room full of like-minded people? Why aren't more people connecting and being excited that they're coming together as one unit and trying to accomplish some goals? But no, it was like sacrament meeting. My gosh, it was really boring. I was like, holy cow. I mean, the keynote speaker was great, but minus that, I mean, it was flat. So
I wonder what the Democrat Party, they have the Jackson dinner, right? Jackson Day dinner.
I'm not sure what they have.
I believe that's the one they have. And I wonder how theirs is, because
That'd be crazy.
they tend to lean a little younger, a little more artsy minded. But then again, I mean, it's a Democrat Party. It just might be a damn struggle session.
Everyone's playing the victim.
It might be like literally like a Maoist struggle session. I saw you do this and I did this, and let me buy some indulgences, and our modern religion demands it. I don't know. I'm
sure they're flogging themselves like, I'm horrible.
See, I'm an independent, so I mean, theoretically I could go to the Democrat dinner, but here in Tooele, our Democrat Party dinner would be a couple of 20-year-olds, that are angry at the world, and then maybe a couple of old people that are angry at the world, and all of them will have, the boys will have long hair and the girls will have short hair, and it'd be, dogs and cats living together in harmony. It's
mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Yes. I just think we can make it more enjoyable. Why does it have to be that a political function has to be boring? I mean, it doesn't. There are comedians that do like political commentary and political jokes. Like, why aren't we inviting them in? Like, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's have some fun. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to have a good time for one night.
Yeah,
And
stuffy
I
Republicans.
I just don't understand why it's got to be so serious, and it's and again really boring because it's so serious. I already, like every other American, I already feel the weight of all the craziness and the division already on my shoulders. I don't need to be reminded again and then pay, $100 a plate to be told and be reminded yet again of how horrible, things have gotten with all the craziness. And so let's have some life into the party. And I feel like there's such a mentality of, well, this is how we've always done it, so this is how it's always got to be done. And I'm like, well, then you're going to be left behind. And the Republican Party, let's be honest, they have been left behind. The young have been completely captured by the left because they do make things look cool and look young and fresh.
They've always been captured by the left, though, because when you're young and dumb, you don't, you're idealistic and you think money grows on trees. I mean,
yes.
I don't know how old your kids are, but tell me a teenage boy or girl doesn't think that you can just toss money at them endlessly and it's no problem.
Yes.
So they do think that. It's when you get older, maybe you get a couple of meetings with the IRS throughout the years, you start going, wait a second, this is hard.
I was just violated.
Yeah.
That's what you say after the IRS leaves.
Seriously.
Yes.
They should put, a counselor right outside the IRS doors, because I'll bet they could use it.
Yes, they need some therapists.
You gotta go down to the hospital, have a special kit done, and
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Now our Lincoln Day dinner that we went to out here, what was that, 2 years ago?
No.
Was it 2020?
Yeah, we went to it last year. It wasn't so
Was
bad.
it last year?
I don't think there was a comedic stand-up going on.
It wasn't super exciting, but they kept it moving and kept it flowing.
Mike you guys did it better than we did.
Yeah, Mike Lee was there.
He was the comedian.
Yeah, but we had Mike Lee and Chris Stewart there. Mike Lee honestly has a lot of personality going, so he kept it light, but it kept it moving, and Holly doesn't let anything get boring because, I think it'd drive her crazy. But it was rather well. But I do take your point. It would be good to find a comedian that stays inside certain lines. Obviously, you don't want, you don't want Doug Stanhope at the Republican Lincoln Day dinner. That'd be kind of rough. I don't know if anyone knows who that is, but but you could find a comedian or maybe even a band.
Or, that's just an idea, but you can lighten up the mood or get people be excited and be buzzing about the fact that you're in a room full of people that are like-minded and enjoy each other's company.
I envision a craps table, a roulette table, an open bar, some cigars.
Why not?
That's what I call a good time.
Right. But yeah, I feel like overall, again, the Republican Party has we've kind of done it to ourselves, where we haven't really done a better job of innovating with technology and with the future, and we've been left behind because of that. And I was telling Chase this, I was watching a YouTube video and an ad for ACLU came on, and even just the soundtrack to that ad was like, holy cow, they look cool. They just look cool. And I'm just like, why aren't we doing stuff like that?
And if people only knew what's the end of their plans,
right? But why aren't we doing things to attract attention to our party? And I think a large part of that is we're just very much used to like, hey, leave us alone. I just want to be left alone. I just want to live my life. And that was all well and good, but now we're past that point. You are past the luxury of being left alone and being silent.
Yeah.
And that's why we are in the predicament we are in now, with the current state of affairs. I mean, if you look at what is happening to Trump, I mean, holy cow, that guy has a ton of resources and he is fighting an uphill battle. Imagine if if he gets a guilty plea or a guilty verdict, then imagine what that's going to do to the everyday American that's a conservative. I mean,
it's good.
Say anything.
This country might get real interesting real quick.
Yeah.
But
and so
here's
the
Republican part. Now you've got the Democrats. They always make their promises. And their promises is free college and, everyone gets to ride a unicorn on Thursdays and, and we'll hold anybody who did anything wrong to account forever. And, the Democrat Party promises. And they've never held their promises, thank God. Because if they did, boy, would that be a fun world.
We'd run out of unicorns.
But the Republicans always make the promise that I'm going to offer you a world where the government is not going to be in your life nonstop. And they've never delivered on their promises either.
And that's not realistic. That's not a realistic promise.
God, I wish it was.
I know, but
I mean, I'm a 10th Amendment guy. I want the only taxes I pay ever to go to the county. And then the county sends it to the state and the state sends it to the feds. But now I've got to do it twice, and I've got to claim last year's state taxes for this year's federal taxes. Who wrote that loophole in? Because it doesn't add up mathematically in my head. But, whatever. I mean, the government's got to get their pound of flesh for everything you do, not to mention anything they do is unconstitutional. Anyway, we can just dig into that a little later.
Yeah. We've let the government get to the size it has. And the longer you have something introduced into the economy, the harder it is to unwind it. Mm-hmm. And the size of the government, I mean, it would take generations to undo what we have done. And it's not that it's impossible, but it could be done.
Might happen overnight without us wanting it to. I'm just saying
that too.
That's a tradition. It's like who was the rich guy they asked when he lost all his money? How'd you lose all your money? He says at first it was slow and then it was immediate. And the government, right now our government is running on a deficit. That's a government that's on the verge of, making everything obsolete in the country.
What do you mean by everything obsolete?
By making nothing of value anymore. When the rest of the world, if 10% of the people around the world who liked our dollar being the currency of first spending turn their back on it, we'd be over.
So
we'd be selling our aircraft carriers for, congressional payments.
So there's a couple of reasons why I'm not too worried about that happening, where the US dollar isn't the standard bearer, where we lose that status anytime soon. And so I don't know how much you guys, let me kind of explain my formal education. So I've got my bachelor's and master's in economics from the University of Utah. Okay. So we're going to start going into the really geeky stuff.
Yeah, do it.
So
please.
Numbers.
So the reason that I'm not too worried about it is because back, I think it was in 2011, there was a point where OPEC actually considered denominating oil in the yuan as opposed to the US dollars. Mm-hmm. And China said absolutely not, because the one thing China does that gives them an advantage over the US is that they do a dirty float against the dollar. So they were flat out pegging it against the dollar. We went to the WTO. They said, we said this can't be happening. WTO agreed. So technically they do a dirty float. So it's not that they officially have pegged it to the US dollar, but they dirty float against the dollar. If they became the currency.
Explain the dirty float real quick.
Mm-hmm. So meaning like we devalue, let's say that we inflate our dollar. And so then what they'll do is they'll go ahead and inflate a little bit less. So it's not technically right on par. That
so
would
they
be
peg it for competition.
Yeah. So if they peg it, like, let's say we inflate our dollar by 3%, they would, also increase it by 3. But like a dirty float would be like, we increase it by 3% and they like do 2.5.
They just go right below us.
Yeah.
They
So
don't let their economy decide the value of the yuan. They peg the yuan just right beneath the dollar.
yeah. So because then it gives them an advantage.
Well, I've said forever, I've argued with a couple people who've been on the show. China does not want our dollar to collapse.
No, they don't.
Because
No.
without us, China is done. We are their customer.
Yes. And so, well, us and the EU, but if we collapse, the EU collapses. If our currency goes, so does the EU.
The EU can't support China like we can.
No, but they are as an economy of, like, if you actually combine the EU states together as one unit, they're pretty formidable.
Yeah, but are they on par with us in spending in China?
Some would argue yes. I don't know. I don't know all the numbers, but some would say if you did the EU as a whole, again, as one unit, that they would be pretty dang close.
Okay.
And so, not individual countries in the EU, but the EU as a whole,
as the union.
And so, and this is part of the reason that you see, the EU also bowing down to China just as much as we are. And so, no, China, like, they want to be able to manipulate their currency. They can't do that if they are the standard bearer. If they are the standard, everybody else will manipulate against them. Yeah. They certainly don't want that. And maybe at some point in the future, they'll want to be the standard currency. But as of right now, there's no advantage for them to do that.
Yeah. It's just like there's no advantage for them to patrol the world's waters and keep them safe when we already are. I mean, that's an expensive endeavor as well. And people are always saying, oh, they're going to build a fleet. And it's easier to let other people defend the world than you have to do it. And they love to have safe trade routes as well in China, because they don't have the battle carrier groups like we do. So they need safety as well.
Yeah. It's cost efficient. Why would you do the work if someone else is going to do it for you and for free? So, so I'm not worried about, again, us not being the world currency, at least not for any time soon. But yeah, China is definitely something that we do have to keep a close eye on. They are definitely not happy with the whole Taiwan situation. And we'll have to keep a close eye on that, just because that's gonna throw a loop for our economy if there's major conflict between the US and China about Taiwan.
I don't see us getting directly involved with Taiwan. And in fact, it might even be to our advantage if Taiwan is attacked, because then we can sell Taiwan more weapons and help China rebuild afterwards, maybe even. And I don't know. I just, why is it a black eye for America's economy if Taiwan is attacked, other than the fact that we don't have chip factories?
So not only about the chips, but it's also about the fact that Japan, South Korea, Australia, they will all consider that as a major threat to their way of life. I don't know how much you know, and I don't like proclaim to know all of Chinese history, but the history between Japan, China, that goes back so like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we are, the strongest ally that Japan has. And if they feel under threat, we're going to definitely aid Japan. And if they go into Taiwan, if China takes Taiwan, they're going to want to take bigger stakes in all the waters around China and Southeast Asia in general. So that's another problem that causes an issue. And then again, you had the Quad. So you had Japan, Australia, India, and the US. Yep. And so if Japan and Australia call upon the US to help, I don't think we're going to be turning our backs away from them.
And don't forget, China's made no friends over there.
No, they're not.
Cambodia and Thailand are kind of friendly with him. North Korea is a
They're a little
schizophrenic.
bitch.
Well, North Korea is like a schizophrenic little Down syndrome kid in the corner. It really is. It just
With
acts
nuclear
that way.
weapons.
I relate to them like, or I, use the analogy. They're like the high school prom queen that never got over high school. They're like, look at me, I'm relevant. And
Well, it'd be better to argue they were voted the prettiest girl in first grade that turned out to be an ugly girl in
exactly,
high
yeah,
school.
yes. But
Yeah.
so China, they don't have to play friendly with any of those areas. Anywhere in the Southeast region, they don't have to play friendly, and they don't.
Mhm.
They just take what they want when they want it, and that's it.
Yeah,
Other economies.
They play awful hardball with everyone down there.
Oh yeah. Anybody else that is geographically further away or politically a little bit harder to push around, then that's when they court them and play nice with them, make them feel like they're loved and they're wanted. We have not done that as much, hence the reason we've lost a lot of our ground with these countries. But yeah, that's part of the problem, is that China wants what China had like 1,000 years ago. Everything that was considered under the Chinese domain 1,000 years ago, they want it all back. It's like,
Yeah, they want the Qin dynasty alive again.
yeah, I'm like, we're over that. Life has moved on. You should move on too, but that's not what they're doing. And they play the long game. I will give the Chinese this. They are more patient than the US. They play the long game. And so, yeah. And sometimes I feel like we don't think far enough ahead, and then we have to end up playing catch up, and they're already 5 steps ahead of us.
Do you think that could be not that I have before.
You're fine.
I'm not speaking negatively against our presidential system, but do you think that may be because every 4 years we have to have some kind of turnover, even if it's within the same person? They have to bend themselves to the whims of the populace, such as this go around. We've seen how Biden ran his first term, but this go around, Biden, even through his first term, has had to change every 2 years because he's got an election coming up. He changed for the midterms. He got a little harder. I mean, no one talks about this, but Biden has been extremely hard on China this go around. He's been extremely hard on them. Even most people would argue harder than Trump was on China. He just doesn't, wave the pom-poms about it when he does it, because that makes his party angry. But he's been that way because he's got to bend to the wealthy populace.
I think to me, I feel like Biden would be more that schizophrenic analogy that you used. I mean, he's just all over the place.
You're thinking, well, yeah, of course, it's not Biden. It's someone else when you say schizophrenic, I think you mean Alzheimer's or senile.
Bipolar?
Well,
our whole system is bipolar. I mean, you go Republican, you go Democrat. No, what do other countries even expect from us? I would have a hard time making an arrangement with the United States of America, just because it's such a bipolar dynamic.
Yeah, Mexico found that out. Mexico had an awesome relationship with Trump. Literally. I mean, the Mexican president, I forget his name, loved Trump. And then Biden gets in, he hates Biden. He's spoken out frequently about how much he hates Biden, but he loved Trump. The same guy that everyone said was racist against Mexicans, the Mexican president loved him. Hates Biden. Hates him to his core.
So to answer a question about, the every 4 years, I don't think that's really a problem, because in the past, I mean, we've been steady through different administrations. The problem is now, like you said, the bipolarization is becoming larger and larger. And that is going to make the every 4 years a problem. And so, but if we can just as a country, just as citizens, agree that we don't hate our country, and that
Good
we'd
luck.
like to make our country work. I think just that alone would help to stabilize some of this. But it's weird for me because I grew up not, I wasn't born in the US. I was born in Korea, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where
I came
in
here,
Korea?
just outside of Seoul.
Yeah.
And so
I was over there in the army. I was at Dongducheon.
okay.
Yeah.
So I came over here, but when I lived in Korea, I heard about the US, and I mean, it was the way people spoke of it, adults or kids, or, or what kids imagined it to be and what adults talked about it was. I mean, it was the place. I mean, it's like the golden city, it's almost mythical in its description. And I was told that the country is so wealthy that the sidewalks were made of gold. And it was like, I mean, but everybody wanted to be American. Everybody wanted to come to America. And somewhere along the way, that turned into every American hates their own country. I'm like, what happened? And everyone's ashamed to be American. And I'm like, what? To me, it hurts, because I grew up with the idea of what America stood for. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people who have never lived outside of the US, they can't appreciate that nobody lives like the US, not even Europe. Like,
Mhm.
we are 1% of the 1% of the world population. And they don't get that. They think everybody lives like the US. And I'm like, nobody lives like us. And so I think if people could really see what life is like outside of the US, they would have a better appreciation for it, you know?
I agree.
And
I agree. Though I love Korea. I love the people, the culture.
you really love the food. That's what it is.
Well,
Everybody loves the food.
Some of the food was, yeah, its food was pretty good, but I was there in the service. So, most of the time it was just cheesy rice off of a gut truck or, squirrel on a stick. But no, I
Yeah.
loved the people. I love,
Do they really have squirrel on stick?
I don't know. It was probably cat, whatever. But
Dog.
yeah, no, dog was expensive. I used to get drunk and hop the fence of our motor pool, because right on the other side of it was a dog farm. And so I'd get all mangled and get stumbling and hop the wall with a pair of bolt cutters and go snip the chains on these dogs that led to the collar. And they were just like cattle. It woke me up like, these aren't dogs anymore. These are livestock. They just sat there and looked at me. So, yeah.
You actually tried to feed the dogs?
Did it 3 times. And the old guy'd come out and he'd yell at me and chase me off, and whatever. But I felt bad. But a plate of dog was like $100, and this was in '96.
Okay.
Ain't no GI paying a week's worth of pay for a dinner.
Oh.
But no, I loved it, and I loved their. Well, one, if you ever go to South Korea, I don't know how it is. This was 25 years ago, 26 years ago. The artistry that people had over there was off the charts. I mean, they would take anything they did to the next level: wood burning art, the cork art, anything. And then, if you want to buy neat, cheap knockoffs, it was the place to be. I've heard it's not the same anymore, but it has grown a lot. But it was just amazing. Amazing people and amazing inventiveness. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place. But like I said, if people could see that lived in the US what the rest of the world lives like, I think they would have a better appreciation for what they've got here at home.
Yeah, we went right through Uijeongbu, which is a middle-sized city in Korea, and people are still using chamber pots. Houses are still built out of plywood. And this was in the 90s,
Yeah.
I mean, so it is true. It's a different animal everywhere you go.
Oh yeah.
The world economy's catching up, though. I mean, you go to, I spent a lot of time in Brazil through the years, and I've watched Brazil modernize, and I'm like,
Oh, they're exploded.
I could do this, man. I could live there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got a lot of good stuff here in America. But I mean, you know, you go to Europe and you see some interesting stuff over there. I lived in Italy for a couple weeks last year, and I was blown away by the quality of food and the prices. And I suppose that's because I earn an American paycheck. But you know, there's good quality that we don't have access to around the world, and we are missing some things, and I think that might be some of the things that people see and experience that make them come back here and say, hey, why don't we have that? And I can tell you one of the reasons why we have corn syrup in our food is because of our government. And
Yes.
and you know, I kind of see where the anger comes from after experiencing a large plethora of experiences around the world. Why do I have to suck on corn syrup in my ketchup when the communists in Germany get real sugar in their ketchup? And there doesn't really seem to be anything I can do politically except for scream, shout, and throw a tantrum. And even when I make sense, it still can't correct itself. And I think the fact that a lot of things don't make sense and they can't be corrected is one of the big frustrations that us Americans have with our political system. It shouldn't be this insane. We shouldn't have to scream and shout for a regular, free, open economy, and things like corn syrup shouldn't be in our foods if sugar was able to be imported into the country under a free and open market. You know, and it does. It changes your view of other countries when you see them enjoying things like that and tasting better foods and higher quality, just cultural experiences. I mean, nobody even walks in America. You go down the city in Salt Lake, there's nobody really walking, but you go into a European city and the streets are filled with all these wonderful vendors selling
I've
cool
explained
stuff.
to you why that is, though. It's because
whether it is or not, it just sucks.
Walking depends on when the city was built.
Yes.
It's if the city was built before horse riding was the main means of transportation, there's not even horse riding available. If it's built after the horse but before the carriage, carriages don't fit. And if it's built after the carriage but before the car, carriage is the main means. And if it's built after the car, walking is just unattainable. You just can't, even LA. But you go to New York, walking's more attainable because that city was started before the car.
Possibly. I mean, it's a good
But you
theory.
just can't, a new invention comes along. You can't say, okay, now we're going to tear down the whole city to build it to the standards of this new invention. And you're obviously not going to build a new city to the standards of old stuff because none of us would have flushing toilets.
Now, there's one thing about America that you definitely can't complain about, and that's our toilet systems.
That's
so,
right.
So when I am in Brazil, I have to put the toilet paper in the garbage can most of the time.
Oh.
Imagine that.
It's because they run 2-inch sewage.
Sucks to be that part of Brazil, you know? I mean, so we have our advantages and we have our disadvantages.
Most of the rest of the world runs 2-inch sewage. You know, that's what kills them. But anyways, we got a little over 20 minutes left here. And I'm dying to get an education on what modern monetary theory is. I hear it thrown around a lot. So give us a blank overview of
so just a high overview of it.
Yeah.
So basically it's just that if you control your own monetary policy, you can print unlimited amount of money. Now, the reason that this only works in a closed economy and not in an open economy is because if it's in a closed economy, your currency isn't trading against anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
So you could, in theory, absolutely just keep printing money as much as you want.
And it would never,
you are a closed economy.
In a closed economy, it'd never cause a breach somewhere, a hyperinflation or
in
recession.
Basic theory, no. In basic theory, if it's a closed economy, then it wouldn't. You are self-contained. So you could print as much as you wanted,
And
in
then
theory,
everyone
it
would
wouldn't
just
cause inflation.
everyone would just raise their prices underneath it as far as the eye can see. Like the loaf of bread this week would be $2 and next week would be $2.03. And then the week after that, is that how it would run on the base level of the economy?
Yeah, because again, it's closed. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is the US is not a closed economy. We are an open economy. Our currency floats against other currencies. It gets traded against other currencies. Our trade is based on our currency values, each, respectively. And so when you have the currency now, trading against other currencies, now your monetary theory, your modern monetary theory doesn't hold. Because you can't just print unlimited amount of money, because then your currency would be devalued to nothing. No one would want to trade with you because your money is worthless. And so that's where you get people that are like, oh, we can just keep printing. No, you can't. But there is an argument to be said that, okay, if the US, if the Federal Reserve ends up, putting more money into the US economy, most likely the other central banks across the globe that are major players, they will usually do the same, maybe not the exact same amount, but pretty close to it. So then it's really relative. Does that make sense? Our country going into debt is then relative, because it's not just us going into debt, everyone else is going into debt too. So then really, are we much, deeper in debt than anybody else? Not really. And so there's an argument for that. But the problem is you can't look at any government entity or any economy as like a household. You can't treat it as a household. It's not going to have a budget like a household, because households have expiration dates. When people die, that's the end of the household. Governments don't die. Those are entities. It doesn't matter if one president dies or, different members of Congress die. We just refill it with new people and the government keeps going forward. So there isn't an expiration date. And that's where a lot of people, for them, it's a very hard idea to connect with, because the only way you can relate to budget, when we say the word budgeting, would be your household budget. And so that's how they relate it. They relate the federal budget to their household budget, and it's not the same, because one has expiration date and one doesn't. One can print its own money. You can't print your own money in your own house. And so it's a very odd concept for people to be able to connect with, and a lot of them can't, which is why you have a lot of them upset about how the budget is handled. And I'm not saying that the government is doing that well, because heaven knows they're not. The deficit's out of control, and our budget is way higher than it should be. But again, this doesn't work like a household budget.
Would you say Venezuela is a closed economy? Like when we talk about open and closed economies, what is the exact definition of a closed economy? Is it just an economy that does not float its dollar against other bills?
No, it's that there's no trade with other countries. You are self-contained and self-sustained.
So North Korea would be pretty close to a closed economy.
Yeah, that's about as close as you're going to get to a closed economy.
But they've done it to themselves.
Yes,
they
have.
Essentially don't want to trade, and I think that's so that the dear leader can keep people under the thumb, because he doesn't want them to find out that different hairstyles exist and toilet paper can be two ply and quilted and things like that. He doesn't want them to know that. That's just for him.
Yeah. So that is, it's self-imposed and it's not self-imposed. North Korea has an insane amount of sanctions against it.
Yes, they do.
And so it's been imposed upon them from the outside world, but at the same time, it has been imposed upon themselves, because of the fact that it's a dictatorship and they don't want outside influences to come into their economy at all, into their culture. And so they have closed themselves off, but you can see what happens when you don't have trade, and so you can't really survive on a closed economy. You have to have an open economy where there's trade flowing. And really, the efficient solution would be that the citizens within the country that have a passion or really like to do whatever it is that they like to do, that they go into that career, because then they'll help to innovate it, they'll help to push it forward. And then in theory it would be that those people would then create industries within that economy, and that can be traded with other economies for other goods from their countries that they excel in. And I mean, that's ultimately what the ideal would be. But the truth of the matter is, it really comes down to whoever has got the cheapest labor.
Well, yeah, cheapest labor or the quality valuation, like the American cars. I like to explain it like this: up until the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, the American cars were dog crap.
Oh yeah,
they were dog crap until competition from Japan and Germany and yes, even Italy joined the party. Maybe even a little bit of France. I doubt it. But at that time, the Peugeot was actually a decent car. Renault's never really competed on a market. But until that competition came in, the American car was crap. And the Americans had to play keep up. They had to, we got to make a better ride. We've got to add this in. So, yeah.
It's good to have an open economy and to have trade flowing.
Definitely.
If someone else does something better and cheaper, great, because we probably do something better and cheaper in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, again, the ideal, that would be, every economist's dream, because it would be efficient. But yeah, it just really comes down to the cost of everything.
How would your favorite sport look if someone got into the sport and that was where the sport was going to be forever, say football or hockey or whatever, instead of new people coming in with new ideas, better times, everything else, it's the same theory. You want that competition.
So
yes,
this BRICS economy has been talking quite up a storm quite a bit lately.
Yes.
And would that be a good thing for our dollar or a bad thing if this BRICS did appear on the marketplace?
Well, BRICS has been around for a while, so I'm not sure what you're
about
asking.
20 years. Yeah.
But they haven't actually enacted it yet. I mean, it's not a system that's in place yet. Correct? So
officially, no. Unofficially, it's already been in place for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So BRICS, meaning Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and the S stands for South Africa. It used to be BRIC, and then they added the S for South.
Well, and Australia's hopped on and off a couple of times throughout its lifespan.
Yeah, so the BRICS countries are really for what are still called developing economies. So like the U.S., Japan, China, the U.S., the EU, Canada, Japan, South Korea for the most part, Australia, those are all considered developed economies. BRICS would be pretty much everybody else. And so like basically all of Southeast Asia falls under the China region. South America just falls under Brazil. Eastern Europe falls under Russia, so on and so forth. And so again, if that's been kind of unofficially been already enacted, if you want to call it that, where China's already been dealing with all those countries and they formulated their own bloc. So it does make it harder for us to be competitive when you've got so many countries that are in bed with each other. But I mean, that's just, you're going to have progression of economies and trade systems. If it doesn't continue to evolve, then trade will actually break down. So it needs to continue to evolve, and no one system ever stays in place forever. I mean, we went off the gold standard, for crying out loud. Nobody thought that was going to happen.
I think we should bring back Dutch mercantilism and just call it a day. And it was a perfectly good system.
But yeah, so it's not going to necessarily be that any one system stays in place forever, but it does have a place and time in the world history, and whether it's to our advantage or not, it's going to exist. Does that answer your question? I hope I answered it directly.
Well, I didn't know it already existed. That's for sure.
It's something that's been talked about for
decades,
at least 15 years, easy 15 years.
I would
Probably
go with
even
the
longer.
20.
Yeah, it's been around. I was hearing about it a long time ago.
But nobody's doing transactions in brick dollars, or it's
No,
more like,
there's
hey,
no-
we'll use your currency, I'll use mine, and
It's
we'll trade that.
they're acting like trading partners mostly.
Yeah.
Like what they are is they're acting as opportunities of first trade, the ability to exchange back and forth with each other, simply easier. Yes, there has been times when they boiled up and threatened to kind of start a competing world bank, but that's just untenable when you're, so far down. I mean, China's got a leg up, but
None of the rest of them do.
yeah, Brazil had a kind of wave and flow points, but South Africa is dead. I mean, that place is dead. We should build a fence around it and pray. India is coming up. India is going to be a mover and shaker over the next 50 years, just because they have so many people, especially if they totally eliminate that caste system. They're going to be a power.
So that's where it gets to be difficult. So even China, technically, they should have already surpassed us by all economic data. They should have passed us as the number one economy, or as the biggest economy in the world by 2020. Mm-hmm. The reason they haven't done that is because they haven't turned the corner politically, and I don't know that they ever will. Nope. So what's happened is their middle class is as big, if not bigger, than the entire U.S. population. Mm-hmm. But with the rise
and they're
of
poorer than every homeless person we have.
Yeah, per capita, absolutely.
Yeah. And their poor are dirt poor.
Oh yeah. Well, what we consider poor and what is considered poor by Chinese definitions are two different things.
Yeah.
But with the rise of the middle class, which also comes with the rise of, the ultra wealthy, they want more political power. Mm-hmm. And that's the natural kind of flow when you have those type of economies that are starting to peak. China hasn't turned that corner because they refuse to share that political power with their citizens. And because of that, it is culturally and economically holding them back to some degree.
Mm-hmm. And what about their one-child policy? Because that bill is coming due. But that bill is coming due.
Oh, it's already here.
Yeah, I mean, it's on. So even if they turn the corner, we're going to see their population plummet over the next 20 years.
They are. There is massive human trafficking into China right now.
Thank God for Mao. Mao handicapped them.
Oh yeah,
he took away all their intelligent people too.
So many women from their economies, and then on top of that, the women that are in their current economy are better educated, which means that they tend to hold off on having children until later years. They want to get, their career established or their education completed. And so, I mean, they've already, I don't know if you guys knew this, but they've been campaigning for women to basically, the way that they worded it was take one for the team, go have kids.
Be a brood mother. Yes, they have. I've seen those ads. I can't read them, obviously, because I don't know Chinese.
But that's what they're pushing for, because their major advantage has always been population. Mm-hmm. That's been their key advantage. And now they don't have it. And they know that's a huge problem. Yeah. Now, India does have the population. They are actually more populous than China. But the problem is, again, economically, they can't turn the corner because there's cultural and political barriers that are allowing them to turn that corner. The caste system, for one, is absolutely a huge
ridiculous.
barrier.
It is. Oh, the Indian caste system is the craziest. When you dig into the numbers on it, It is the craziest thing. People that live streets apart in the same town from different castes in India are further DNA dislocated from each other, further variants than people that from Denmark and Sicily are from each other. And these people live within a mile of each other.
Oh, it's wild.
Their caste system set up by the Brahmins in the 500s BC.
They thought it was a good idea for a long time, huh?
Well, and I think people need to realize when we say caste, we don't mean class. It is different. Like here, you could be born into like a low income class, but move into a high income class, because you work, you innovate, you invented something, whatever. There's opportunity. Caste system, once you are born into a certain caste level, you cannot move from that caste. You can go down, you can't ever go up.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, if you're of a lower caste in northern India, it's the worst. Southern India is okay. Kind of. Northern India, you can't even look at a person of a higher caste. You can't look at them. You have to stare at the ground.
You can't talk to them. They have to talk to you first. Yeah. You are not allowed to approach them.
It is
well, I actually lived in India, northern India, for about a month. And I don't know, it seemed pretty freaking...
Your experience was probably different because you would have been identified as somebody in a high caste system.
Yeah, like and you were probably in a restrictly wealthier area, a higher caste.
I don't know about that,
but you would have, even if you weren't in a high caste area, you yourself would have been viewed as a high caste person. Does that make sense? And it's
also very melanin driven. The lighter skin you are, the higher caste you are.
Yeah. Well, I will say this: they can't swim for crap. I'll tell you. I was actually in one of their like fun parks, these water parks up in by the border of Pakistan and India, and all these little brown Indian kids are like, swim with us, David, swim with us. They wanted to race. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna kick my butt. It's gonna be so embarrassing. I outperformed all of them. All of them. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I want to live here. I feel like I can achieve.
Come to think of it, I didn't see any Indians competing against Phelps, so you're probably right.
First time in my life, I felt like a superstar.
But no, India is an interesting place, and that is, they've got a huge population too.
Oh, if they could tap into that population, they would blow everybody else out of the water, especially anywhere in that region. But the problem is, again, their political policies are preventing them from really unleashing that power. Same thing with China. If their middle class would get unleashed, they would end up outspending us by so far, we would never be able to catch up just because of the sheer size of their population.
And I've heard their bureaucracies in both of them. They're extremely bureaucratic. You have to do anything, you have to meet with 30 or 40. It's like California. You have to meet a lot of government officials to, do anything.
Yeah. And so that's, again, those type of policies, they do hinder the growth of an economy. And that's the same thing here. I mean, Dave talked about how we have all this crap in our food, and we do. And it has caused health problems, which then causes, undue amount of consumption of healthcare in the U.S. And it's a loss of productivity in the U.S. And yet we still, pump cheap food into our economy. And it is frustrating that we can't demand better. I mean, it is literally an act of Congress to demand better from the FDA.
It's not even demanding better. It's just to allow for the import of sugar to be normal imports instead of this exercised demon that they make it right now, because they put all these restrictions on the import of sugar that create this artificial sugar market where only the people in Hawaii and Florida who grow the sugar can really have good access to the American markets. And in turn, it creates such a high price for sugar that the people who invented corn syrup just seem to thrive in America, but only America. Yes. Mexico and Canada, they both have sugar in their
Real
Coca-Cola.
sugar, yes. Like it shouldn't be so difficult that we tell Congress, hey, we would like to have healthier food, put real sugar in there. And they say, okay, FDA, allow it. And no, like I said, it's an act of Congress to get anything changed like that. And it's because there is money to be had. There's markets to be created.
Well, it also shows we're not really truly represented as people. As all the propaganda states in America, what a wonderful representative government we have. The truth is a little darker. And
oh yeah,
again, that also builds onto the frustration, especially since we have social media and everyone can have access to that information. It's very disheartening, and people lose hope. They go into this despair fit, and then you see all this rioting on the streets, and it just, if you gotta do what you advertise. And if we're going to be a representative economy with proper political representation, then man up and actually put out the product you advertise.
Yes, I would agree with this. And there was a joke, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's so true. Somebody said, I feel like all of Congress should have jackets with like that, or NASCAR jackets, where it shows you who's sponsoring them.
Yeah,
because then at least we know where we stand.
and I don't even think it's Congress. I think our issues are our permanent bureaucracies, the FDA, where you'll see the head of the FDA leaves the FDA and goes and works at Monsanto, or goes and works at a pharmaceutical company, and a previous uppity up at the pharmaceutical company will go and become the head of the FDA. And so it feels like the U.S. from its inset has had an issue with protectionism. With, look at the Johnson Act. If you're not familiar with it, brush up on it. It's an act, I think, in 1920s where they made it so that ships traveling from the U.S. with goods had to land in the U.S. So it's really restricted some of our foreign trade, where all of our foreign trade has to be carried by a foreign vessel, and it killed our our open water trading vessels. It killed our market, destroyed it, and it's still on the books, But anyways, so we've always had an issue with protectionism, and I think we've got to nip that in the bud. Either we've got to nip it in the bud on the bureaucrat side, or we have to write laws so that the federal government can't get that intrinsically involved in your day-to-day commercial choices. We know they're not going to do that, so let's write laws so that you can't cross-pollinate.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's frustrating just because, like you said, what they say they're going to do, they don't. It's false advertisement in my book.
Yeah.
I'm like, I would like to be able to sue based on false advertisement. We allow that in Utah, so let's do it.
Do you think our courts would ever be able to deal with a murder trial or anything if we sued on false advertising?
Oh, right. Of Congress? Yeah. No.
Congress or anyone?
Yes, any of the politicians. Yes. Yeah. That's the hard part. And I get where Dave is coming from, that you feel frustrated. I think all Americans feel frustrated, that we feel helpless. And it's partly because we allowed ourselves to fall asleep at the wheel. We became apathetic with our voting and looking at who we're voting for. We're just like, oh, you got a D behind your name, I'll just vote for you. Or you have an R behind your name, I'll vote for you. Why are we not vetting the candidates better? This is where, again, there's plenty of blame to go around. It's not just all politicians. It is the voters as well. And we're not involved as we should be. We're not as informed as we should be, because we don't want to. We're just like, again, we just want to be left alone. We don't want to deal with this. And that's on both sides.
It's not just that. I mean, the big issue with the voters is you're a little person in a sea of, 360 million people. Right. So everyone shows up for that presidential race and pounds their chest and runs their drums for someone who honestly shouldn't affect your life at all. But when it comes to your mayor or your city council or your school board, Nobody cares. And that's one of my goals, is to turn everyone's focus towards these small government actions. Because
Yeah,
that's when it
it's the
matters. Your county seats matter.
yes, it's the bottom up approach. You
Yeah.
know, small things at the lower level ultimately go up and
Mhm.
affect the top. You know, who you pick as like GOP chair or who you pick as delegates, that's going to affect who they vote for, you know, the general elections, like for state legislature or for, you know, members of Congress. And then that ultimately affects, you know, either at the state level, your state legislators that you have voted for, and then, you know, at the federal level, the representatives you've voted for. Like, people don't realize it starts at the bottom. It starts at the local level. And I agree with you 100%. They very much discredit the importance of local government and what it means to be involved in that and to be aware of it. Because you're right. Everybody wants to know who the president is, but half of them can't tell you who the mayor of their own city is.
Yeah. Yeah. Or imagine asking anybody out there, what's your county commissioner or your county chair's names?
Yeah, exactly.
Who? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a position.
Those are the ones that actually affect your life.
Yeah, they have
Biden-
a much more direct impact.
Yeah, the only thing Biden does for my life is gives me a chuckle when he says something stupid, you know? That's it. Other than that, he's not making any decisions that I even recognize in my day-to-day life, except for gas prices. But that's
I was going to say
really-
gas prices.
that's not
gas
technically
prices
him alone. That's
And gun rights.
an abundance of things. Well, he hasn't touched my gun rights yet, you know, but Obama gave me the right to carry on BLM land. But yeah, for all Obama's work, he gave me the right to carry on BLM land. That's great. Last presidents to give me more gun rights. But I wonder if he recognizes he did that.
I don't think he did.
But, you know, but the mayor, I recognize every step they make. I feel that. I feel the county. I feel the school board, you know. And so I want to drive focus there. We can change, you can change your life for the better there. To all you people who wants to get Trump in or Biden, get him in. It's not going to change your life one bit. I argue even if Trump would have won again, this recession was coming because of COVID anyway. We couldn't have dodged it. The things that happened during COVID, not because of Trump, but because of Whitmer, because of, you know, the different governors, was going to happen anyway. Just, you can't dodge it. That price came due. That's it.
Those policies that they enacted, they were going to do it no matter who was in office. And they did. It didn't matter. It did cross between two different administrations, between Trump and Biden. And they just kept with those policies. They don't care who, you know, who it is. And that's the thing, like, you know, who our governor is, that's a big deal.
Yep.
They affect who your state legislative representatives are. That's a really big deal. You're talking about your tax dollars at the local level being affected and being decided by those people up on the Hill.
100%.
And again, you talk to people, I'm pretty sure, I mean, most of the people in my circle, they all know who the governor is, but you ask some random people, I'm pretty sure they're going to be like, I don't know who it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty sad.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
Yet they still vote.
Yes, that's the scary thing.
They show up and vote for president and then mark whatever flavor I like, blue or red, you know, down the line. They're not going to pay attention to, you know, you'll never see them vote across party down the line. Those are what people who pay attention to.
Yeah.
They're just going to vote a single party because this party is the one that my college professor that I really liked told me to vote for, you know? And so that's where we're at.
Yeah. The stupid thing is that both sides, left and right, both sides have good ideas and both sides have horrible ideas. But the problem is they won't they won't come together and say, okay, let's work on the good ideas and dump all the bad ideas. They're just like, no, that idea came from you, so I can't support it. Or that idea came from the other side, so I'm not gonna, support that. And it's so dumb. Somebody actually asked me, it was actually at the Lincoln Day dinner benefit. I think they were trying to kind of see where I stood, and they're like, well, where do you stand on like policies? And I'm like, well, that depends on the policy. That depends on what is being pushed through. And they just looked at me like, okay,
not
like
all
I don't know how to
policies are
take
the
that.
same, right?
Yeah, but it's just that's the general perception is that you have to go with the policy of your party. No, you have to go with the policy that's going to be best serving the voters, the constituents, the citizens. If it's not in their best interest, it's not a good policy. And again, both sides have good policies and both sides have horrible policies, but yet people refuse to take the time to look at it. And again, this is half the reason we're in the predicament we're in now, because we have as voters, fallen asleep at the wheel. We're just like, check all red, check all blue, or just don't vote. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not helping anybody.
We no longer vote for individuals, we vote for parties.
Yes. And that is the problem.
Yeah.
We don't vote, and nobody wants to take the time to look at what they're actually voting for. They literally just go, are you red? Are you blue? Check.
You ought to read, if you get the chance, people out there and listening to us land, read Davy Crockett's notes from when he was a senator. They're very interesting and enlightening. It's amazing. But he talks about that, and that was more on a personal level. Parties weren't so big back then. But I sometimes wonder, if I was to put a conspiracy hat on, tinfoil hat jumped on, I almost wonder, it feels like the parties, an issue rolls along, and in a dark, smoky room somewhere, a couple of party representatives go in and they play rock, paper, scissors as to which side they're going to take on this, right?
Oh,
and they come
I don't
out,
think that's.
And then their people rise up in fury about it, unless it's war. They both jump in. Both parties always jump in feet first on the war. But, abortion, this side, and then everyone around them just jumps up. That's our side. And I'm going to lay my, mental fortitude and my honesty and my integrity out bare for you to see, so I can support my color, my blue or my red or my whatever, or gun rights, or, criminal justice reform, whatever. They always do that. And that's what it feels like to me.
Well, that's because you're not far off. So that you don't really have to have a conspiracy, tinfoil hat on to feel that way, because that's actually the reality of it. There's a podcast and it talked about the profitability of the duopoly, the dual party system. And
it keeps us from focusing on individual measures that can make a difference and tear their power away.
Oh, absolutely. They make, it's a racket. They make so much money having a only two-party system. And if there's ever a rise of a third party that could possibly threaten that, you will never see the two sides come together faster, not even on war.
Well, Ross
they will
Perot.
come.
Look at Ross Perot. It used to be, what was it? The Women's League of America used to run the what do you call it? The debates. And Ross Perot comes along, outperforms either one of the two guys.
Oh yeah,
in
he
the
split
debates.
the votes.
And so they
Chad's here, by the way.
Oh, okay. We can bring him on in. But anyway, so they so next thing you know, the Democrats and the Republicans take it away from the Women's League, which was a nonpartisan kind of political movement. And now the Democrats and the Republicans run it.
Yeah, well, you look at even like Gary Johnson in 2016. He had the numbers to go into the debates. They absolutely shut him out because they were not about to have a third party on the rise. Again, you will never see the two parties coming faster together to crush the possibility of a third party rising.
Yeah,
ever.
they changed the laws. Oh, did we say 3%? No, we mean 5. It's
Oh,
gonna be
5?
5. Yeah.
Oh, you hit 5,
Yeah.
we mean 10. Oh,
Yeah.
you hit 10, we'll say 11.
Yeah.
Like
They
that's
do that. Look at what, and then if they can't do it, they get the media involved, and then the media reports on Ohio and says, look at this. We got this guy in first place. We got this guy in third place. Well, who took second? Well, we don't want to mention Ron Paul's name in
We're not.
Ohio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the second place. But yeah,
It's
this is
crazy.
and that's the thing is that people don't realize that definitely does exist. And I don't think you're that far off in saying that there's definitely some backroom, talk of, okay, we're going to take this side, you take that side, and then we're going to play it up in the media.
You see two
We
guys
are
in
all
there.
getting played. Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously. No, it's what it feels like. But
It's more than a feeling.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that's what it's just sometimes they take a stance on stuff. I'm like, really? What? But then again, I also think there's also the pendulum of power politics, and whoever's in charge culturally over any given point is going to, go headstrong into defending that. I mean, the Democrat Party in the 60s went headstrong into defending gun rights because it was the Republicans that was taking guns away from African Americans. And now the Democrats hate guns and the Republicans love them. It's just a wild world we live in.
Oh yeah. If you look at like in the 60s and 70s, the Democrats were anti-establishment.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans were the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's flipped. The Democrats are the establishment and the Republicans are the anti-establishment.
Yep.
I mean, how did that happen? And you're right. It always
It goes
swings.
by whoever has control.
Well,
when
the
you're
pendulum always swings left and right,
Yeah.
and it's gone far left, and it's starting to swing to the right now.
yeah,
And
what I would like to do, I'm hoping I can do this, and I know Dave's trying to tell us we got to close down the show, but what I'd like to do is I'm an old man, and I remember the last time that the conservatives had power and the ridiculous things they tried to pull. I remember when they were trying to push it. So in biology class, they had to teach, intelligent design, or they wanted them to teach that. And that's just ridiculous. Don't bring religion into the science class, and we won't force you in church to talk about, gametes or whatever.
evolution. Yes.
Yeah. Separate those two and
There's a reason why there's a division of church and state.
yes. And so, and right now, the Democrats are the religious side that is pushing their religion to the extreme and the detriment of everyone else. What I want to do is, as that pendulum swings back, I want to be conscious to tell people and say, okay, we're at a good spot. It's a nice medium. Let's stay here.
Good luck.
Oh, I was going to say that's not
That's
going to
not
happen.
human emotion.
I know,
No,
but that's what
that's-
I want. That's, I want.
Human nature doesn't change. It has
I
never
want an
changed in all
enlightened
these
centrist.
years. Yeah. and
It
it's just-
does
if you-
change slowly as you evolve them genetically through government programs.
As we turn them all into
I mean,
transgenders.
hey,
and the
look, we
boys
turned
become
wolves
girls.
into cocker spaniels.
Mhm.
Come on, give the government time; they'll change us.
Yeah. Well, Kim, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
We didn't talk enough about your run. I recognize that.
That's
But
okay.
I like these bigger subjects sometimes.
Absolutely.
But
Gives us a better insight into the candidate.
Yeah. There you go.
plug any information you got on your run. If you got a Facebook page, website, anything, plug it all right now. Let them out.
Yeah,
Let the people know how they can get all of you and find out stuff.
Yeah. So I have a webpage. It's kim-hamblin.com. And on there is all my contact information, all my social media information. And, the one message I just want to get out to people is get involved, wake up, get involved. We just don't have the luxury of anymore of being able to be like, well, someone else will take care of it. No, we have to take care of it. We made the mess. We need to clean it up. And people need to pay attention to what's going on. And if they don't, we are going down a slippery slope already.
Mhm.
And if we don't stop this, it's gonna I mean, I think this is going to be far more atrocious than people can even imagine. And I don't mean just internationally, I mean domestically. And we're already seeing it, the polarization of our country. We're ripping ourselves apart. And we can't be doing that anymore. We need to come together. We need to unite as Americans, and not hate our country. Quit hating our own country.
That should be your slogan. Let's not hate our country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you looked into Vivek Ramaswamy at all?
No.
He's going to be challenging Trump for president, and his message mirrors that a lot. He's an impressive dude, but yeah.
I is it Vivek?
Well, it's Vivek is how it's spelled, but you pronounce it. He's an Indian guy.
Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, I have heard of him.
But
Yes.
it's
He is
pronounced
impressive.
Vivek.
I do like him.
Intelligent,
Yes.
but he has more of a spiritual message of running, which is wild to hear about, but he wants to uplift American love and, all that stuff. It's interesting. Check him out.
Yeah. It's interesting. If you look at other countries, rarely do you find countries that hate their own home as much
Yeah.
as Americans do.
Well, they won't
It's
say
just
it.
such an anomaly.
Let's face it. People who run away from Mexico because cartels are shooting at them and their government is corrupt and their police force is dog shit, get up here and put a big Mexican flag on the back window of their GMC. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, actually, because I see everyone with these little flags
And I'm
hanging
not
from their
saying-
mirrors.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. I mean, people in Puerto Rico hang a Puerto Rican flag. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But why do people from America hate America?
Yeah. I don't know why we hate our own country.
Yeah.
Again, it baffles me. We're not war torn, I
Yeah.
can understand people who want to, they hate, the warlords that have taken over their area, or they're a war torn country, or, they've lived in extreme poverty, not
Uh-huh.
American poverty, like real
Yeah.
poverty.
Yeah,
And
where-
they hate
where
their
our
country for, and they
American
hate their country
poverty,
for
the-
that. But to hate a country that is full of freedoms and opportunity and wealth,
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't understand. What are you hating? I don't get it.
It's not about hating America. It must be more about hating themselves, because in America, we make the country that we live in.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no other country that probably is more influenced by its peasants than America.
That's a message that
So-
you need to teach them.
Perhaps we just hate ourselves.
Well,
But why?
What's
That's what
the-
I want to know.
what's the number one issue of people in America that are poor? What's the number one issue of poverty in America? Obesity. That's all you have to say. In North Korea, they don't have an obesity problem except in the deer leader. They just
there's
don't.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. And what they have found, they've done studies on this. The one factor that will pull people out of poverty, and being healthier and being wealthier, education.
Yeah.
Education is the one factor that will, it's like the ultimate key that unlocks all of this. And yet we are the wealthiest country with like some of the lowest scoring scores in the
Well,
developed economies. Like,
also,
what is that?
How much is our government and our political leanings weighed on our education system over the last 35 years?
I got
Oh.
my degree on YouTube.
Why is it that men have withdrawn from the education system while women have blazed ahead?
So there's lots of talk about why that is. There's,
Well, I mean, it
evolutionary.
can't be that Title IX was kind of unjustly weighed and spread out across more stuff than it should have been spread out across. It can't be that woke, has bled into all that to where men feel like to step into that one, they feel like, well, a lot of them, if you're a white man, you've got to battle twice as hard to get in there. And I'm not.
Oh, you guys are the evil of the world, don't
We
you know?
are.
White
And
men.
I'm not saying that crying, because you know what? Keep doing it. all you're doing is honing white men.
Oh yeah.
You've got them on a sharpening stone, making them as sharp as they can be. You know, that's just all you're doing. Same, you know, don't feel bad. I mean, you're of Korean heritage. Your Korean men are right there next to us heading down that path. I mean, you're
Oh
considered
yeah.
white now. I mean, if
Yes.
they want you to be, it
Somebody
depends.
said we're white adjacent.
Yeah.
Wait,
That's
that's a new one.
that was the article. I was like, I'm sorry, what?
It is.
Jason.
But
Yeah.
you know, this is the thing that makes me upset, because people are saying that Asians are like white people, right? No, we were the last race to be in internment camps in the US. Yep. The reason we have the stereotypes that we have of we're super smart, we're super hard work, because that's what we did. We put our nose down, our heads down, and we freaking worked. We outworked everybody. We out educated everybody else. Like, we earned it. We earned that stereotype for a reason. And so when people are constantly saying, well, this race is oppressed and this race is oppressed and this other race oppressed everybody else, I'm like, that's not true. That is so not true. We worked our way out, and we now have a view about us that we've worked for, not because it was handed to us, not because it was, you know, given to us or taken from us, or however you want to word it. It's because we worked for it. And people need to just quit complaining and saying that they're the victim. Just work. Just shut up and work. Nobody cares. Just work harder.
Can I offer a little argument? I think the reason that the Asian community, I'm talking from India up to Korea, up to Manchuria, we'll go all that way, has done so well is because a political party hasn't come in and tried to rescue you. Because you still got to work for it. Not that you had to, you got to. Mm-hmm. And I would argue the reason the African American community has had such a hard time is because they've always had a political party there looking at them and saying, you're not good enough. You need us to protect you. And looking up at someone else and saying, you need to give us money to give to them. And that is what has killed them. You know?
Yeah, I could see that.
And that, thank God for you guys that there wasn't somebody coming in and saying, oh, we've got to take care of you and let me, you know, delay your growth into adulthood and maturity.
We just tell them to shut up and get out of our way.
And as you should,
we're just here to work. Just get out of our way.
Look at it. Prior to the civil rights movement and the you know, Johnson's Great Leap Forward or whatever he called it, prior to that, the African American community had better numbers on every metric. The African American community had more kids born to married couples than whites did and Hispanics. The African American community had had better numbers on recovery of money and keeping money in their neighborhoods and neighborhood growth. And once they dropped that welfare bomb on them, it ended.
It's like being coddled as a child for too long.
It's like being coddled as a child.
Oh, that's what the current generation is. I mean, they're so coddled. They can't, you know, all these parents are afraid to tell their own children the word no. And like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is, they need to know what the word no means, because they're going to hear it a lot in life.
That's right.
They need to know.
That's right. But yes. Kim, we said some compelling stuff tonight, and I'll probably be yelled at by someone somewhere for it.
You and me both.
Doesn't matter. I'm okay with it, but I like boy, it'd be cool to see someone with an economy degree get into politics. There's not a lot of economists that dive in there.
I know. That's because they're smarter than I am. They're not diving into it.
Oh, I dig it. Yeah.
Good luck with your campaign.
I'd like to have you on again sometime, just to have a general kind of economy breakdown, you know?
Oh, we didn't even get to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We can talk about crypto all you want.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But you know, and talk about like the Austrian school, things like that, you know, your experience with all that stuff, you know, everything else. But Kim, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Remember, it's Kim-Hamblin, Hamblin, HAMBLIN.com. It'll be in the show notes. If you can't remember it, just we'll put a hyperlink in there. Do you also have a Facebook page and everything else?
Yeah, it's all on the webpage. So you can
Okay.
see all the link to all of that.
Perfect. All right. For you guys in Cache County, she's running for your GOP chair. And it sounds like she's embarking into the fun world of politics. So we may see her on a state level soon.
Oh,
All right. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
thanks, you guys.
You have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.